Welcome to the Kindred's UMC pre-recorded live show, coming to you live pre-recordedly from Kindred Studio A here in my front room. My name is Chris Hayden. I am the pastor.
Hi, I'm Courtney Young. I'm Director of Community Engagement here and also the king of this shindig.
And I'm Preston, and welcome to Wall Street Bets.
You look like the guy.
I was told today, and I'm like, that'll be my thing today. I'll be that guy.
You should shave your beard for Halloween and be the Wall Street Bets guy.
What's Wall Street Bets?
Oh, no.
I can't explain it to you.
We don't have the time.
We don't have the time.
Okay.
Viking.
Oh, that's right. We're going to do Viking stuff.
Maybe we'll do
I was
Halloweens.
going to do One Punch Man now that I'm completely bald, and
What if I do...
Who's One Punch Man?
I don't have the time to explain all of culture to you.
Be culture. I was thinking maybe I'll just bring a razor. And be Uhtred Bebenberg first, like with a kilt. Uhtred. With like my sword and stuff, and then go into a suit with like a red tie, and I'm like, all right.
It's Matt's
make
here to
some
pick
money.
my Halloween costume, so I don't know what we're going to be.
Weird.
We switch.
Can you guys not? I don't want to hear that stuff.
We switch.
Heathen.
Last year I
Holiday.
made him be Woody from Toy Story.
That's
Listen,
very bad.
we're going to talk about Jesus. Well, actually not. We're actually going to, and very indirectly, we're going to talk about God and the Bible. We are in our second week of our series on the mighty King David, the rise and fall of King David. This is where he actually gets anointed. So before we read, let's catch up. So Israel, originally the design of Israel was that their king would be Yahweh, the Lord. They didn't like that, and so they pitched a fit and threw a temper tantrum, and then God's like, fine, but your king's gonna be real shit. It's not gonna be good. And they're like, we want one anyway. And then that's how they get King Saul. And it turns out that it goes exactly as God said. Like, he's a bad king. It doesn't go well. He does find some victory at first. It goes well at first, but then it starts to get really bad. And God is like, basically he claims property after a victory in battle that he shouldn't. And God becomes displeased with Saul and says, that's it. I'm picking my own king. And he's sending the prophet Samuel. And this is from the book of 1 Samuel. The prophet Samuel is going to anoint the new king who's going to be king. So, all right, this is 1 Samuel, chapter 16, verses 1 through 13. The Lord, aka Yahweh, the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you grieve over Saul? I have rejected him from being king over Israel. Fill your horn with oil and set out. That's how they anoint, with oil. He's got a horn filled with oil. Set out. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, which just means he lives and is from Bethlehem. For I have provided for myself a king among his sons. Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears of it, he'll kill me. Because obviously if you're king, you don't want another king anointed by the prophet. So the Lord said, take a heifer and take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to Yahweh. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do. And you shall anoint for me one whom I name to you. Samuel did what Yahweh commanded and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him trembling and said, do you come peaceably? Because normally prophets come to say, like, you done fucked up, and now the angels are going to destroy your whole city. And so they're like, hey, why are you here? Like, fun story. It's like, clean up, everybody hide the weed. Hey, what's going on, Samuel? How's it going? Things are cool, right? And they're like, oh, okay, good, all right. So he said, peaceably, I have come to sacrifice to Yahweh. Sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. This is actually good news because a sacrifice is actually a feast. He's gonna meat is like a very rare thing. You don't kill goats or cows, you milk them so that you can live off of them. In this time, the only time you kill a goat or a cow is during a sacrifice to Yahweh, and then everyone gets to eat of the sacrifice. So this is like a big deal. Like, we're making prime rib here. So they're like, oh, we thought it was bad, and now it turns out it's going to be great, So, and this is going to be a little pattern of subverting expectations is a theme in this story. Okay, So, sanctified Jesse and his sons, and he sanctified Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they came, he looked on Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed is now before the Lord. It's weird because his name is Yahweh. Surely Yahweh's anointed is before Yahweh, is what he's saying. But Yahweh said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, but because I have rejected him. For Yahweh does not see as mortals see. They look on the outward appearance, but Yahweh looks on the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, neither has Yahweh chosen this one. Then Jesse made Shammah pass by, and he said, neither has Yahweh chosen this one. Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, and Samuel said to Jesse, Yahweh has not chosen any of these. Samuel said to Jesse, are all of your sons here? And he said, there remains yet the youngest, but he is keeping the sheep. And Samuel said to Jesse, send and bring him. For we will not sit down until he comes here. He sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy, and he had beautiful eyes, and was handsome. And Yahweh said, rise and anoint him, for this is the one. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon David from that day forward. Samuel then set out and went to Ramah. So it's almost like a little joke structure kind of a thing. It reminds me of, if you've ever read The Hobbit, when the dwarves start to arrive in The Hobbit, Tolkien goes on and on about and this one had this color cape, and this one had and it's like all the different dwarves come in. That's kind of what the story reminds me of. And then this son went before and then this son, but none of the sons worked out. It's kind of a children's story kind of a feel. So as I said, subverting expectations. 1, the idea that the king that God chose is bad, that he's changed his mind about the king, basically. 2, the whole why is the prophet here? It's all kind of like cloak and dagger by shade of night. Hey, we're just gonna have a feast. That's all. I'm not doing anything bad. I'm just having a feast, And then he's like, hey, but here's what we're really doing. One of your sons is going to be the next king. And then he starts to go all this now. So first of all, what do you make of just the story in general? What sense do you make of it?
It's very hereditary sounding. Everything's about sons and your family and how tied up you are with them, and how the oldest is usually the most important. Oldest is usually the most important.
Yeah,
oldest is usually the most important. And then this flips it again, flipped on the head.
Yeah.
Everything is changing. Everything is not what you thought. Again and again and again and again. Mm-hmm. So with David being, it's really funny too, because they mentioned the handsome thing too. Mm-hmm. He had beautiful eyes and he was handsome.
So that's actually, we would hear that as a good thing.
Yeah.
That's actually a bad thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he's pretty.
Oh.
He's not a king. A king is a warrior. A king is a figurehead.
You're right, yeah.
A king is a king is the physical manifestation of our kingdom. We want a big guy with a scar on his face and a sword in his hand, that's what we want, and here we have this little boy who's pretty all the day long. He has very pretty eyes, so that another subversion of expectations. This is not what the people want. This is not what the people would want anyway.
Yeah, it definitely sounds very children's story-ish, like you were kind of saying. That was the sense.
I think again, on the orating part of it too, it's easy to remember. It's easy to repeat.
And then this definitely started as a tale you would tell around the campfire before it was ever written down. So, what do you make of David not being at the feast? He's out tending the sheep.
I think it's par for the course.
What do you mean?
The youngers work for the elders always. That's how it is now. The younger kids always kind of catch up to the elders while the elders are doing the more fun things or hanging out with the parents or doing, either the harder work or the work that makes more money or something like, especially in that age.
Yeah, tending sheep, especially, maybe not so much in this, but by the time we get into Jesus's era, which is thousands of years later, the people who tended the sheep were probably like pedophiles and criminals.
Yeah.
Because they live out in the fields and they
Away
smell
from
like
people.
sheep,
Yeah.
and you're not allowed to be in town.
They're not only not important, they're also like actively discouraged from being a part of regular
Yeah.
society.
Yeah, so the runt is doing the runt job.
Right. It's not quite as strong in this era because it's, people aren't as civilized and organized cities yet. I mean, there are definitely cities, but it's, it's different historically. But it is still like shit work. And so it's interesting that Jesse's the father of this whole family. The prophet of Yahweh comes, which is their whole big thing. He might as well be like the president, Even though they have a king, he's like the real one who's the go-between between Israel and God. And so Samuel shows up and says, listen, one of your sons is going to be king. I don't know who it is, but Yahweh is going to tell me which one of you're going to be father to the king, and one of your sons is the king. And he leaves one in the field. They're rich. Like Jesse is rich. He has many sons. He has many servants. He has flocks and herd. It's not like he couldn't have somebody else out there in the fields.
Yeah.
They were so confident that it would not be David, this little fairy boy, pretty boy, can't be. They were so confident, you manage the sheep while we party. He was so low on the totem pole for the kingship of Israel that he wasn't even considered by his father a remote possibility. And Yahweh decides on him. Now, why does Yahweh pick David?
I will first say, I don't know. And then I will say, I would guess unexpected.
I think there's something very deliberate about unexpected, but it's in the text too.
Yeah, it says that God looks at the heart.
Oh.
Do not look on appearance. Mortals look on appearance, but Yahweh sees through that and looks at the heart. Now, this is really important because, again, the whole idea of a king is you're going to be the physical representation of our kingdom. And so God is making a very profound statement about who Israel is going to be in the land. He's not saying you're going to be a conquering, mighty, violent force, which is what it was a violent time. That's what you did, And Yahweh is making this very different statement about who Israel is. And in the Old Testament in particular, it gets a little weird because Israel is obviously a group of people and a nation. But Israel is also personified. It was a person named Israel. And there, especially Christians with New Testament stuff, it's not just about this country that's supposed to, it's also, there's a message being sent to anybody who wants to follow after God. This is the nature that you're going to have to adopt.
I was going to say, or else why would it be in the Bible? The whole point of the Bible is to be this, God-breathed word. Literally, if we're talking about how it was orated around bonfires and stuff, it's what people remember, one, and two, the cream rises to the top. So if these are the best stories that help the most people, then call it God-breathed. Then call it's supposed to be.
Well, and it's interesting that these stories rose to the top because, when you think about the actual story of Israel, this is not the story that you would tell for the birth of your nation. This is we were enslaved in Egypt, we couldn't get out, something else helped us, and then we were dickholes about it, and then we had to go in the desert because we just couldn't remain faithful, and then our king was this little pretty boy, and like then we begged for this king who turned out to be a real like monster of a king, and then the next king was this little pretty boy, this weak boy, and then like so a lot of it is counterintuitive. So the idea that these stories are rising to the top, there is something. Again, it's so like, this is a little bit of a stretch, but go with me. It's the thing I always talk about. God's way to victory and healing and wholeness is almost always completely counterintuitive to human beings. Mm-hmm. Human beings lean into pick the biggest guy to be king. Like, pick the strongest person to lead the fight. And we're going to see this again. Next week, we're going to talk about David and Goliath. Pick this one. And God is saying, you have no idea how the world works. And it's the same thing, too, when we go like, all right, we think that Christianity and like faith is about God tells us all these rules, and we obey those rules. And if we obey those rules, then we get things that we like.
Right, behavior modification.
Right. Yeah. And like all the while, the whole story of the entire Bible is going like, that's absolutely the wrong, like, it's not just the wrong way, but it's like the evil way. It leads to judgment, separation, violence, control, oppression. Like, it leads to the worst aspects of humanity. The idea that like, yeah, give me a list of rules to follow and then I'll do that, rather than write the law on your heart. Learn to depend on God. Like, God sees the heart. God sees beyond the appearance of what you're showing to the world and how you're behaving. God sees to the truth of who you are, to the core of what you need, to the core of what you want. Like, and there's this constant message of like, it's counterintuitive. The way to be healed is to surrender. The way is confession and forgiveness and grace, not I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps and get God's blessing, you know? Like, so what does that, because we've talked a lot about that. What does that make you think of? What does that remind you of in your own life? What have you seen that is in that realm of like that counterintuitive kind of God's ways, very different than ours?
Just rule followers and book nosers, I'll call them those. A nice book to be buried in is very nice and well, but if there's a disaster right in front of you, the book that you're holding is not going to do anything about it. So if the book catches on fire, you can't read the book anymore to tell you how to put the fire out that the book is trying to tell you. Of course.
Well, beyond the because that's a good analogy, but beyond the hypothetical, when have you found that God is acting in a counterintuitive way in your own life, or maybe the opposite, where you like...
As a teacher, students teaching me.
Okay.
I think that's counterintuitive. I think we all think teachers should teach and never be on the opposite side, because then, for whatever reason, our brain thinks to lose faith in someone that is supposed to be teaching us. So we lose faith in someone that doesn't have all the answers. So instead, you're boiled down to on the level of somebody younger than you that has no experience in life or whatever, where they also don't have a tainted view on life because they haven't had experience in life or whatever. So
there's something about seeing value, like seeing the value of a student's perspective.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a great
Why
example.
wouldn't it be this way? And well, we always did it this way. Well, why couldn't it be this way? Something like that.
Yeah.
And with my vein, it's more music based, but even that is, why wouldn't I use my left hand here instead of my right?
I just realized one of the lights is still moving. Sorry, everybody. Sorry, go ahead.
Flipping it on its head, in what makes me, I don't want to proclaim, but a great teacher, because I'm willing to listen to reason versus...
I think that's what generally makes a good teacher, period.
I would say a leader as well. Tell me how to be right then. Another one, if you want to do it, you go ahead and teach. If you want to do it, you go ahead and lead, and I'll learn from you then.
And I think there's something about
that's very
surrendering to, let's see. And we're either going to find out that I'm right and you're wrong and you really do need to listen to me, or I'm going to learn something new here, and both of those are good. So let's go. You know?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest coping mechanisms, I've talked about this before, is self-minimizing, is focusing on you, and not actually listening to what I need and what I want, and not boundary setting very well. And I think a lot of times within the church specifically, I have been taught like, oh, you don't, like, your needs don't matter. What you want doesn't necessarily matter. Our goal is to reach other people and help others, and like, that's
destroy yourself for the sake of the Lord.
Right, like that kind of like wordplay.
Which is, it's a slight corruption of the actual message of losing your life to gain it. You know, like,
right.
Like that's what's so nefarious about that. It's like a half truth.
Yes, and unfortunately, I took to that quite literally, because that was an easy way for me to cope and not actually deal with my own pain, my own suffering, my own issues. And so, like, it's counterintuitive, but over the course of the last year, I've been learning that, like, saying no and setting boundaries and allowing myself to take space in a room is what has allowed me to serve other people.
Yeah, it's the make your bed thing too. I'm so sorry to have to neglect you or whatever. I've got to take care of me first to even try to help you in the first place.
For me,
selfish as it sounds.
For me, it's not even like that either, though. Like, it can literally be as simple as somebody will ask me to hang out or do something. And the question that I've been asking myself, this is a very new, very recent habit, because what happens is I get so busy that I then become like burnt out and exhausted, and I don't realize that there's something wrong until I feel myself becoming like irritable. Like, I was on the phone with a friend the other day, felt myself becoming irritable, and was like, oh, there's some work that needs to be done here that maybe I need to address. And so my new thing that I've been doing is, like, if you were to ask me if I wanted to hang out, or if I had a day off and I wanted to see if you wanted to hang out, I've started stopping and asking myself, am I wanting to see this person and make these plans because I genuinely want to go hang out with Preston and it would be fun? Or am I doing that because I feel like I have to reach out to Preston, because if I don't reach out to Preston, Preston doesn't like me anymore?
True.
And that in itself has made like such a big difference, because it's allowed me just to like step back and be like, oh no, I actually really don't want to do that, and this is going to become work and exhausting and draining for me and not be life-giving.
Which is weird. Again, another half-truth in social interaction now is the question, would you like to, or do you want to? Fully expecting, of course, definitely.
Right.
Not expecting, I'm sorry, I can't, or no, I can't, which usually leads to a guilting or a shaming or something to get you to say yes.
So again, so all of this is rooted in this, because we're in an abstract place from the scripture, you know. But I want to like try and connect these dots. What you're talking about is the guilting. These are all ways to control other people. And it's very, very scary to have relationships where you are not in control. And people want to like exert some kind of a guarantee, some kind of a like, you can't leave me because and like that again, that's the way of the Pharisees. That's what Jesse's trying to do in this. He's trying to like stack the deck so that his older son, he's like, and all the while God is like inviting us into this place of like, no, trust, surrender, even if that person does leave you, even if I don't want to go hang out, trust either that relationship will still be a loving, good relationship, or that if it's not, then that needs to die.
Right.
Like, and not that it won't hurt, and not that it won't be like a struggle, and that like all of that is still true, but that's the counterintuitive thing. We spend our lives trying to avoid pain, and God is kind of inviting us into the truth of it, which invites inherently some suffering and some struggle and but this is the way that leads to life. Like, this is the way of Yahweh. He picks the counterintuitive, the pretty boy, the small fry, the one who's in the the way of God is counterintuitive to our natural wanting to control. And life comes a lot. It opens up when we start to lean into the like, okay, I'm going to be true to who I actually think God has called me to be. I'm going to humble myself before a student. When we do these counterintuitive things, I find that that's when like the path of God in life opens up. So, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Oh, I just